Global markets on edge ahead of what is arguably one of the most important meetings from the Federal Reserve, which wraps up on Thursday. So will the Fed announce a rate hike? Ian Weiner is the head of equity trading at Wedbush Securities and joins me now from Los Angeles. All right, Ian, it's nice to have you here. What do you think the Fed will do?
I think the Fed's going to probably stand pat and do nothing. I think that ultimately, if you look at sort of what their two goalposts have been, employment and inflation, employment, you could argue that we're there, although there's a pretty compelling argument that it doesn't capture a lot of the slack in the workforce. And as far as inflation, there's been absolutely none. And if anything, we might be caught in more of a deflationary environment. And so those two things, plus the overall volatility you've seen in the marketplace over the last month, and with what's going on in emerging markets, it seems unlikely to me that they're going to raise rates tomorrow.
All right, now inflation has been holding the Fed back, but just this morning we got August CPI, which is not the Fed's preferred inflation gauge, but it rose 0.1% on a core basis. The Fed constantly says that weak inflation is due to transitory factors. Don't you think that the Fed will look past weak inflation?
Well, I don't think they're going to look past weak inflation, and I don't think that the situation is transitory. I mean, the reason that there's deflation is because you haven't seen a whole lot of wage increases. And the reason you haven't seen a whole lot of wage increases is that technology has structurally shifted the economy, where now people can just get things a lot cheaper, and businesses have found a way to automate a lot of their process so that their operating margins are as high as possible. So if the Fed is ultimately worried that this is going to just pass, or they think it's going to be transitory, I think they're going to be mistaken. Now, they may want to try to raise rates just to get the first one behind them, but even if they do, it's going to be accompanied by a very dovish statement as far as the pace at which they'll be raising rates from here.
Now, in terms of the market's reaction, if the Fed does pull the trigger on Thursday, will we see an immediate sell-off? And if so, is that a buying opportunity?
You may see a slight dip. I ultimately don't think this matters. I mean, I don't think whether they raise 25 basis points or they keep things as they are is really what's going to drive the train in the market here. The issues are clear. The issues are the global economy. Even FedEx this morning came out and talked about weakening trends in sort of their trucking business. So to me, it just seems like this is a lot of noise, but ultimately, even if they go 25 basis points, they're not going much higher anytime soon. So, the market probably sells off a little bit just because I think that's sort of the natural reaction at this point, especially after the big rally yesterday. But in general, I think that the focus is going to shift to other things, i.e. government shutdown, China, and potentially what a stronger dollar could mean to a lot of these emerging markets.
So do you think we'll be seeing more volatility in the coming months, regardless of what the Fed does on Thursday?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the volatility is going to pick up, and it's going to pick up for a couple of reasons. One, the fundamentals around the world are changing rapidly. And I think, if anything, on balance, they're getting worse. Second is technical. Now, a lot of funds are underperformed again this year, and I think there's going to be a lot of performance chasing towards the end in Q4. Right. And what that typically does is it drives funds sort of buying rallies because they don't want to miss it, and then selling dips because they don't want to be there if the market sells off further. So this tends to exaggerate moves on both sides.
All right, Ian, we'll be watching what the Fed does on Thursday. Ian Weiner, head of equity trading at Wedbush Securities. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Scott.
I'm Scott Gamm, and you're watching The Street.